Hey, everybody, welcome back to Practical Liberty. My name's Henry Bingaman, and I'm rolling solo for this episode. I wanted to talk about something that affects all of us and will actually have a big impact on the future economy and the future of work in this country and probably across the world. Now, I don't usually agree with socialists, obviously, given the context of this podcast. In fact, if there's a group of people that push my belief that it's impossible to be wrong about everything all at the same time, it would be the socialists. However, they are right about one thing, and that is this economy is rigged. It's rigged against most people for the benefit of a few people. Now, I don't agree with their solution that we should rig the economy further just to benefit a different group of people. But the general premise that this economy is not set up for normal people is just factually true at this point. We've all been sold on this traditional path of how the American dream is supposed to go, right? So it's you do well in school, you go to college, you get a good corporate job, work your way up that ladder. At some point in your 20s or early 30s, you buy a house, you max out your retirement funds, index the market, mutual funds, all that, and then you should have a very comfortable retirement. I mean, does that sound true to anybody anymore? First of all, college is largely educating people out of their brains. It does more damage to a lot of kids than it does good these days. The corporate job path, I mean, the boomers won't leave. There's no corporate ladder anymore. They've kicked that ladder down behind them. Obviously, some people can climb up, but in general, it's much harder than it used to be to climb that corporate ladder. Then buy a house. You know, this used to be the biggest source of wealth for people in America. In fact, for the boomers generation, their first and second houses are their source of wealth, right? They'll never go broke because they could always just sell their millions of dollars worth of houses. But most people today can't afford a house, even a starter house, until they're in their 40s. The jobs just aren't paying enough, and the housing market is completely insane. It's way overpriced. It's due for a correction, but who knows when that'll come. And then the stock market. It's kind of the same thing as the real estate market. A lot of it's a bubble that was created by the Federal Reserve. You know, they've been printing money like crazy since 1913. And we're at this point in the inflation cycle where I don't know. I don't know how it's sustainable. I don't know if they can keep going with this, but they're going to keep pushing it and try. So the fact is, nobody knows what's going to happen with the housing market, the stock market. It's too unpredictable, but it's not somewhere I would bet a large portion of my wealth to make money. I think property is a great way to preserve money. If you can afford land or houses, it will probably keep up with inflation over a longer period of time. But as far as creating that wealth that the older generations relied on, it's just not there anymore. You know, one of the biggest problems is that the system of employment is broken. It's broken because of a lot of perverse incentives. The way the system is set up, both the employer and the employee get screwed. Think about it. If you're an employee, you have very little room to negotiate your compensation package. And you have to give up a number of rights to be able to work for people if you want to sign an employment contract. Think about it. You give up a lot of rights to privacy. Most corporations today are allowed to look on your computer. They're allowed to look at your browsing history. They get to follow you around. There's usually a code of conduct, which is how people get canceled and fired for social media posts that are otherwise innocuous, but the company doesn't want to look bad. And as an employee, you are an official representative of your company. Then on top of that, there are a lot of times these really stupid non-compete clauses. It's not like most companies have actual proprietary information that if it leaked, it would destroy their business. What they're really doing is locking you, making you afraid to quit your job, locking you into that company for as long a term as they can get. Now, most non-compete clauses are somewhat unenforceable. If you went and worked for a direct competitor, it would be really hard for an employer to come after you and sue you and try to get you fired. But nonetheless, it's a deterrent for you going out to get a new job. And then from the employer side, it's also just a mess. It's extremely expensive to hire employees, and it's a pain in the butt to find good people in the first place. And then when you do, most employees don't realize this, but the employer has to pay another, I think it's on average 30% on top of the salary that they offer you. So if I come to you, I want to hire you and say, offer you $100,000 salary. Well, I'm paying $30,000 on average in benefits on top of that, just through federal requirements. So that's things like your healthcare expenses that I have to pay, your retirement benefits, a lot of other things. In some states, it's even worse than that. I'm thinking about California and Hawaii, I think, have some of the most generous employee programs out there. I call them generous, but they're not necessarily good for the employees either. That's things like paid maternity leave, mandatory childcare, disability insurance. long-term disability insurance payments, paid sick leave, family medical leave. All of these things really add up. Now, it sounds like these are great for the employer and the employee. I mean, it's a great benefit. Like if any of these things happen to you, then, if you get hurt long-term, if you have a child, it seems like, oh, this is great. I get to keep making money even though I'm not working. But really what it does is it makes it harder for the employers to actually hire people. So if you're an employee and I want to hire you for $100,000 a year, just because it's a round number. So I pay you $100,000 in salary, and the work you do brings in $130,000 in income for the business. That's a net $30,000 a year profit for the company, right? If a company didn't make profit, they're not in business, then you don't even have a job. So if I had to pay $30,000 on top of that, I need at least $140,000 of work from you. So I'm pushing you harder to make more revenue for my company for these benefits that you're likely not even using. Now, wouldn't you, as the employee, rather just get the $125,000 or $130,000 a year to make that $140,000? I would. It's really kind of infantilizing how we tell people that we can't pay you this because you're too stupid to spend the money in the right ways. You're going to blow this. It's going to be irresponsible. We just can't trust you. Therefore, we're going to have these massively wasteful programs in general because most of these benefits don't get used most of the time. So they're going to overhead and paying these insurance companies and these medical companies money instead of just putting it directly in your pocket. So at the end of the day, both the employers and the employees kind of lose. And it sets up this incentive system where the employers hate the employees and the employees hate their employers, right? There's a joke about how nobody likes their boss, but nobody really thinks about it. The boss doesn't like the employees either. Now, I don't mean that necessarily personally. If you have a boss, he might think you're a great person. He might even like spending time with you, but he hates the fact that he has to employ you. He hates all these he hates all these programs that he has to pay into because he hired you. Now, smart employers will know it's not the employee's fault, but it's pretty easy to mistake the person that's causing you to pay this for the government that's forcing you to. So it creates a really ugly dynamic in the workplace that's just not good for anybody. So I think we can agree it kind of sucks to be an employee. Now, there's an alternate path, right? The other part of the American dream is that you can go out there and start your own business, entrepreneurship. Everybody talks about it. It's all like turn on YouTube and you'll have 10 entrepreneur type courses out there. And look, entrepreneurship's great. I love good entrepreneurs. But let's face it, most people aren't really cut out to be entrepreneurs. They don't want to be. It's not fun. First of all, there's a huge risk of failure. You could go out there, invest your life savings, get people to invest in you, have to go out and start a business, fight all this regulation, and then fail. Lose your money, lose investors' money. It's embarrassing when that happens. I know I've invested in people that lost their money, and I don't judge too hard, but at the same time, some of those people take it as a personal failing. If you're an entrepreneur at heart and you have to run your own business, you already know that. You would have known that from the time you're a child. If that is your destiny, you can only be an entrepreneur, then you'll have already figured that out. Nothing I can do here will talk you out of it or talk you into it. But for most of us, it's just not that appealing of a path. It's a ton of work with a high risk of failure. Plus, when you start growing, you have all those same problems that I just talked about from the employer end. You have to deal with the government. You have to deal with the regulations that are constantly changing and growing. It's not the most fun path in the world. Now, it can be extraordinarily rewarding. And if you want to build a business that's $100 million, even $50 million, $30 million, something like that, you probably need to be an entrepreneur. You're never going to make that type of money as an employee. But the thing is, there is a third path. And the third path is getting increasingly popular. And that's the path that I ended up choosing, which is contract work or freelancing. I'm just going to call it freelancing for simplicity for the rest of this video. Now, there's a couple great things about being a freelancer that don't apply to an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur has to be in charge of everything in the business. You're the captain of that ship. Everything is, at the end of the day, your responsibility. As a freelancer, you're doing a very specific job for other companies, but you're not in charge of everything in those companies. At the end of the day, you can help them grow. You can help make their lives easier. But you're not responsible for the ultimate success or failure of the businesses you work with. And most of us, let's face it, just like doing the work that we like doing. That's what gives us satisfaction, a job well done and a good paycheck, right? Now, there are a couple other good things about being a freelancer. The one downside is you don't get those benefits. You don't get medical, you don't get retirement benefits. You're all on your own for that. But the flip side of that is you get all the benefits of being a company without actually having to be a full-scale company. So there's an interesting stat. There are something like 70,000 pages of tax code in the United States. Now, being very, very generous, and this is a massive overestimation, about 1,000 of those pages, let's say, are about what taxes you do have to pay. That means the other 69,000 pages of the tax code are exceptions to those other pages of what taxes you have to pay. It's ways of getting out of paying taxes. And almost all of those exceptions are only applicable to companies. And if you're a freelancer, you are a company. Now, as I mentioned, you don't get benefits, but on average, you do get paid much more than employees because they don't have to pay you those benefits. Employers are happy to give you that extra money that you wouldn't have been able to earn as an employee when you're a contractor or a freelancer, just because your work is worth it to them. They're already paying this. They don't have to hire an employee. So that's why the average freelancer actually makes about $28,000 a year more than his peers do in doing the same approximate work. And freelancing is growing. This is one of the things people don't understand. They say people in my industry, they don't hire freelancers. Well, that's less and less true in every industry across the US. Now, in some blue collar jobs, it's much harder. Like if you're a oil rig worker, actually, there are a lot of oil rig workers that are contract positions. If you're a steel worker in Pittsburgh, that's going to be generally an employment position. There's just no getting around that. The contracting thing makes less sense for them. And there's unions that are kind of keeping out contract work. But for almost all white collar jobs, you can do it on a freelance basis and make more money. So I mentioned it was growing. Well, by 2027, more than half of the country's workers, more than half of the US workforce will be freelance. That's according to MBO Partners research. And so this is a huge opportunity for people right now to take their career and go freelance. So I say this and people have a hard time believing me, but I truly believe it. And I've seen it over and over again. If you have a white collar career, almost any white collar career, so marketing, advertising, law, data analytics, research, writing, computer programming, design, almost any white collar job in that realm, you can quit. If you have a job, you can quit, go freelance, and double your income if you become good at the skill of freelancing. And freelancing itself is a skill. Now, maybe you've stumbled across this video, so you don't really know who I am. If you've been following me for a while, though, you know I'm known in the world for copywriting, right? I was one of the best paid copywriters and one of the best performing copywriters working today. I retired a couple of years ago to do this podcast and the business associated with it, but I still coach freelancers and other copywriters today, so I'm still in that world. Now, my secret really to getting to a seven-figure income as a copywriter isn't that I'm the best copywriter in the world. Now, I'm very good at it. And I worked very hard to become good at it. And I've also built a good skill stack around it. Scott Adams came up with this concept. This was before he kind of lost his mind, apparently. He called it the talent stack. And that's really just combining a bunch of different talents on top of each other. You don't have to be the best at any one of them, but when you combine them all, it puts you in a unique position to be better than other people or to make a lot of money at least. And one of the skills that I'm really good at is the skill of freelancing. But the skill of freelancing applies to a whole lot more industries than just copywriting. Like I said, any white collar job almost, and actually a lot of blue collar jobs, you can go freelance or contractor and pretty much double your income. I know it sounds crazy, but I've seen it done over and over again. Now, I think this is going to be a very important skill moving forward in this economy, right? The employment system is just broken. It's part of the reason the economy's rigged. They want to keep employees down. Mostly because it keeps the people in the government in power better. It makes you more and more dependent on them, which is their lifeblood, essentially. But I was thinking of that old Jurassic Park quote from Malcolm, where they're trying to figure out how the dinosaurs changed sex and started reproducing. And he says, life finds a way. And the same thing happens in the economy. You know, this economy is rigged, but it's only rigged in certain sectors. They can't get away with it everywhere. They needed to write all these exceptions for businesses. And as a freelancer, the government views you as a business. So you have all the advantages that businesses have, but not all of the headaches. One of the biggest benefits of freelancing is actually employment security. Now, people see it as the opposite. They say, I don't want to quit my job. I need the security because I have a family. I need the health insurance. Well, there's lots of ways to work around the health insurance question. I personally use Crowd Health. I should probably get a promo code or something for this. But it's been great. I pay most of my bills out of pocket, but any big things get covered. So I don't live in fear of like a car accident or getting cancer or something like that. I know I'm taken care of, and it's way cheaper than traditional health insurance. But the main reason you're more secure is because your income is more diversified as a freelancer. Look, you almost never have just one client as a freelancer. Sometimes you do, but it's a rare situation. That client is usually extremely high paying, and there's a waiting list for you to get hired if you happen to lose them. Most of the time, you're going to have 3, 4, 5 clients at a time. So let's just say you have 3 clients. Well, if you lose one of them, you've only lost a third of your income. When you're an employee, if you lose your job or you get fired, you've lost 100% of your income, and all of a sudden it's an emergency. With a freelancer career, it's more of an inconvenience. So in that way, it's actually a lot more job security. I named the podcast Practical Liberty because I believe in practical things you can do to make yourself more free. And freelancing is definitely one of those things that you can do to make yourself more free. So with that said, I'm actually announcing an upcoming course that I'm going to release called Breaking Free. And this is how to take your skills and turn them into a freelance career that pays you an enormously high income. I'm talking $100,000, $200,000, even $500,000 or more. I'm going to be releasing this course in about 2 weeks from now. And I'll give you a link that you can get on the wait list if you're interested in learning more when it comes out, along with a big discount code for the initial beta launch. But let me run through what I'm going to be teaching in this course really quickly. So the course is going to be made up of 4 modules. These are all video lessons, but there are some exercises attached to them, so you can actually implement these new skills that you're learning. And like it says, break free. So the first module is called Preparing to Break Free. It would be a mistake for most people to just burn their bridges behind them, quit their job, and say, now I'm a freelancer, start paying me. That's not really how it works. There's a little bit of preparation and work you need to do to be ready. It's probably not a good idea to just quit your job until you know you can replace the majority of your income with a freelance career. So there are a few important things I'm teaching in this module. One of the important ones is an exercise I developed to discover your mobile money skill or your mobile money skills, because in fact, when we talk about the skill stack, you need more than one of them to become a top tier freelancer. This is really cool. It takes your talents and your interests and it combines them into a bunch of skills that you can use to market yourself to the correct clients, the clients that'll hire you. And they'll be really excited to hire you when you develop the right mobile money skills. The next exercise is developing what I call your viral pitch. The viral pitch harnesses a common feature in most business owners, if not all business owners, to get you in front of warm leads. So you don't have to pitch yourself hard. You'll be making this kind of soft pitch to a bunch of people who will then spread the word for you. It's designed to be a very shareable pitch so that basically you have an army of people out there pitching your services for you. In this module, I also talk about why you don't need a business plan. If you're starting a traditional business and you need to raise money, you definitely do. But there's a lot of things that freelancers get caught up on. They think they need a business plan. They think they need office space. They think they need business cards. There's a lot of things that you think you need. And I'll talk about which of them you do and don't need, when they're useful, how to use them, and the only basics you need to actually get started as a freelancer. And then, of course, I'll talk about when it'll be okay to quit your job. And I talk about different methods of going about doing that. So if you're worried about having that conversation with your boss, if you're worried about having that conversation with your family, this module kind of covers what you need to know, and it helps you do it in a kind of safe way where you're not going to be just pulling the rug out from under everybody. Module number 2 is what a lot of freelancers get caught up on, and that is landing your perfect client. Now, there's a way that most freelancers, when they first get started, go about trying to land their perfect client, and it's painful, and it makes you less money than you otherwise could. So I'm going to talk about the what not to do, and then I'll talk about the easiest way to get a client to hire you. A lot of new freelancers go out there, and they just start pitching themselves to everybody. They go up to an employer and say, hey, I do this. Can I help you? What you're actually doing in a lot of the cases, the way most people frame it, is they're giving the client work to do. And you don't want to do that. You want to make this painless for them. You want to make it as easy as possible for them to say yes and cut you that check. Then I talk about actually pitching yourself. Now, most people go out there and they pitch their service. That's the wrong thing to do. There's actually only 5 things you pitch to a client, and none of them are your service. Now, you probably know that you sell the benefit, not the feature. But for some reason, freelancers go out there and pitch their features, what they're doing, not what the client gets out of it, the emotional release the client gets. So these are the only 5 things you can sell your client. I also go over the magic 3-word phrase that you use to pitch yourself to get clients to trust you and believe in you. A lot of people get tripped up on pitching themselves. We're too modest. We're told to be modest in this culture. But there's a way to pitch yourself with this phrase that doesn't make it seem like you're bragging, but still convinces the client that you're a high value freelancer. I talk about the embarrassingly simple way that I got my first client. This works for a lot of people. It could probably work for you. I talk about whether or not you should do spec work to get clients, or in other words, doing free work to kind of prove your worth to them. Usually you don't want to do this. There are a couple exceptions, and I go over those. I go over a foolproof method for actually connecting with whales. Whales are clients that can pay you 6 figures all on their own in a year. These are the clients you want. You want to go after those whales, and you want to be able to have a flow of them. And then I go over the client flow method, which is, it comes from my angel investing experience. You want deal flow in angel investing where there's enough deals coming in that you get to be very selective about the one you choose. Well, I apply the same method to client flow, where so many clients are coming to you that you get to pick and choose the best of the best. And that's really where your career becomes more fun. Module 3 is something a lot of freelancers need, but don't know they need, and that is professional client management. One of the problems that freelancers experience is that they get in a position, they get hired by a client, and then they get treated in the exact same way that that client treats his employees, which is natural and understandable for the client to do. He wants to hire you because he doesn't have to pay you all those benefits, and you get to just go away when the project's done. If the project's done, there's no severance packages, nothing he has to worry about. But at the same time, if you want to maximize your income as a freelancer, you want to be able to get full autonomy on your projects. You want to be more in control. So John Carlton, the great copywriter, calls this being the adult in the room. So I talk a lot about how to do that, how to manage clients, and how to get them to want to give you autonomy on your projects. The next thing I teach is time management. And, time management is a huge thing for freelancers. It's in my early days as a freelancer, I spent hours and hours at my desk working unnecessarily. And honestly, I'm lazy and I procrastinate. So these are the time management tips that worked for me. If you're a lazy procrastinator, this is going to be a great section. It's going to help you out a lot. I talk about how to get clients to agree to outrageously high fees. Sometimes as a freelancer, it feels hard to get high fees, but there are some tips and tricks I can give you that will make clients happy to pay you those outrageously high fees. I have another lesson in this module about contracts. Contracts are important, not because they're particularly enforceable. If you're going to court to enforce a contract, it better be for over 6 figures in back pay. Mostly contracts are there to cover your butt, so they're CYA, and to make sure all the expectations are outlined, and so you have something to point back to. And in this, I'll give you a lot of examples of contracts that different freelancers have used, including a bunch of mine. I have a module on billing and invoicing. Sometimes clients just don't pay on time. They want to dispute things. So there's a professional, systematic approach to doing this that will just kind of make all that easier. And then a big one I talk about is crisis management for freelancers. In the real world, stuff happens. Sometimes it's your fault. Sometimes it's the client's fault. Sometimes it's just the world's fault. So how do you manage it? How do you manage a client when everything's going wrong? How do you make sure the client maybe it isn't happy, but is understanding of what happened and is not going to just kick you to the curb because a crisis happened? This is something a lot of freelancers deal with. There's a ton of stress involved. And if you don't know how to handle it, it can kind of upend your career. And if not upend your career, at least make you miserable for a couple of weeks or months. And then the last module is about scaling your career. So at what point in your career do you raise your rates? It's an important question. And most freelancers don't know how to raise their rates without taking off all their clients. They're afraid to lose their current client, so they don't ever raise their rates, and then they get stuck in this lower than necessary income cycle. So I'm going to cover that in scaling your career. We're going to talk about dumping old clients. At a certain point, you outgrow clients as a freelancer. It's just a reality. But most of us kind of, because there's not the same tension as the employer-employee relationship, we don't like dumping our old clients. So there's a good way to do it and a bad way to do it. And if you want to have a long, happy career, I recommend using the good way to do it. And then there's the really advanced stuff in here, which is I talk about how to have a 7-figure career as a freelancer. Honestly, not a lot of people get here. It takes some guts to do it. You have to have a lot of confidence and a bit of experience. But if you want to know how to get to 7 figures as a freelancer, that's covered in this module. And then finally, in this module, I talk about how to diversify your income. So things like products, speaking gigs, stuff like that, ways to diversify your income. So if you want to scale back on the client work at some point, you have that option. Or if you just want to dramatically increase your income, this will help you get there too. So that is the course, the basic outline. I have a couple bonus modules, including one on how to set up your business in the right way so you don't get screwed on taxes. And that same module goes over how to pay as little taxes as possible. Again, 69,000 pages of the 70,000 pages of tax code, at least, are about not paying taxes. So It's hard to sift through all those. It's hard to know when they apply to you. So I have an expert tax lawyer who is coming on to talk about how to do that. And then I have another module about how to get out of your own way. A lot of us have this head trash and lack of confidence and false beliefs that stand in our way of launching a freelance career or scaling it. There's a different block that comes in every step of the way when you're jumping up the income scale. I've dealt with a lot of these, so I'm bringing on somebody who's really helped me out, and I think we'll be able to get the head trash out of your way so you can start too. Now, this is just a quick overview. I will do a full sales pitch eventually for this, but I'm going to be launching this course in the next couple weeks. 2 weeks, hopefully, maybe 3 if I really need time to work out some kinks. Now, eventually, the plan is to sell this program for $1,000. I'm teaching people how to make $100,000 a year, a lot more than that in many cases, double their income. If you're already a 6-figure salary earner, we could take you from 100 to 200,000. This is really valuable stuff. It's a skill that not a lot of people teach or teach the right way. And this is stuff I have a lot of experience with. I've been doing this for 15 years. I've made every mistake in the book. So I think it's easily worth $1,000. But as I'm building out this course and discovering what people really need in it, I'm going to be expanding it and refining it. So when I launch it, the initial price for the first few months probably will be closer to about $500, probably $495. But if you get in on the beta launch, the initial launch of this, I'm going to give you 50% off that. So I'm setting up an email list that will mail out a discount code that's good for the first week after it launches. You can get on that list by going to henrybing.co/breakingfree, all one word. You get on there, you'll get on my email list, and you'll be tagged on the special list where you get the discount code that's good for the first week. Again, $250 for something that I'll be selling for $1,000 in the future. And you'll have access to all those updates as they come in. You have lifetime access to this course and everything that's ever added to it. So if you want to get on that list, just go to henrybing.co/breakingfree. All right. I hope you found this episode valuable. Freelancing really is the future of work. It's going to keep growing. And there's a huge opportunity because not a lot of people do it right. So if you do it right, you're going to set yourself ahead of the pack in so many different ways and really accelerate your career, and you'll be able to live a more free life. So that's all I got. I'll see you back here next week. Stay free.